tell, do you see the road? I'm out to my soul into the size whenever the smoke clear out of my face and my picture
Hello and welcome back, fellow anime lovers, to Cypherfics. I am delighted to have you join us once again in the world of fanfiction and fantasy. This is the fourth part of, What If BEN10 Meets Azumanga Daioh? Special note, this fanfic is written and a masterpiece of JBoy44 on fanfiction.net. Do check and support the author too. Now smash the like, share and subscribe button for more. Also press the bell icon so that you never miss such great parts. Thanks for the introduction. Now let's dive into the world. Late one night Chiyo was in line for a book signing for Jessica and Ben. Ben crossed his arms and yawned, "Why am I here again?" Jessica rolled her eyes, "Because me and Chiyo want to get out book signed by Jennifer Nocturne, and your parents won't let Chiyo out this late without you." Ben yawned as Jennifer Nocturne showed up and a group of men showed up and grabbed her shooting laser blasts into the crowd. Ben quickly became Spider Monkey as he pushed Chiyo and Jessica behind a car. "Wait here." He then jumped out using a web line to pull himself over the want-to-be kidnappers. Everyone fired on him but Spider Monkey kept jumping around avoiding them, till the guns stopped. The men tried to fire but nothing came out. Ben then touched the dial and said, "You really should have charged them." Going ultimate. In a moment he became Ultimate Spider Monkey and spat out a large web ball that captured most of the kidnappers. One tried to run but was grabbed by Captain Nemesis. Ultimate Spider Monkey then looked at Nemesis and said, "Captain Nemesis, I'm your biggest fan." He then returned to normal and as Nemesis said, "Everyone is my fan 10 Benny-san." The captain in armor struck a pose waiting for people to pay attention to them but everyone paid attention to Ben making him growl. Jennifer was about to give Ben a kiss but he moved out of the way. "Sorry Miss Nocturne, I have a girlfriend." The actress then said, "Ah." Jessica then came out and grabbed Ben's arm and said, "Mine." Jennifer then pulled out a picture of herself and said, "Then how about a free autograph to say thanks?" Ben then said, "Make it out to my little sister Chiyo, she's a really big fan of yours." Jennifer smiled and spoke aloud as she wrote, "To Chiyo, your big brother Ben is the best. Call me if he ever becomes single." Jessica growled as Jennifer handed him the picture and left. Ben looked to Jessica and asked, "I thought you were a fan of hers." Jessica held on to Ben, "Not anymore." Chiyo then came out and Ben handed her the picture. Chiyo smiled and held the picture, "Better than a book signing." The next morning Ben was rubbing his eyes in pajama pants and a black night shirt as he headed to the front door which bell was ringing. "I'm coming." He then opened it to reveal a news crew and Captain Nemesis who was smiling. "Young man, I challenge you to a contest to see who is a better hero. Watched all over the world, we will test feats of strength, speed and willpower to see who is the greatest hero." Ben blinked and said, "Well, I can't say no to you, Captain." He then held out his hand. "It's a deal." The captain didn't shake Ben's hand and instead turned around. "Good meet you town down later today around 5. Later on Ben was at an old train yard with his family and friends in the crowd cheering. Will Harang, who was live, said, "Today Captain Nemesis will put the alien menace in his place." Chiyo was growling and yelled, "Stop bad-mouthing my big brother." Jimmy then tapped Chiyo's shoulder. "Hi Chiyo, my mom let me out for this." Chiyo growled and said, "Mom, Dad, hold me back." Carl and Sandra then held Chiyo as she tried to charge at Jimmy. "Let me at him. Let me at him." Jimmy blushed and looked down and said, "I'm sorry, it was a mistake." Carl then said, "I've never seen a cuter rage." Jimmy looked sad. But the first contest started. We'll point to train cars. Now then, the first contest, how car can you throw this? The captain then picked one up and threw it 4 feet away. Ben smiled and slammed down on the omnitrix dial, becoming way big, who picked up the train car and dropped it 50 feet away. The captain growled as Ben became human and will look down. "Okay, moving on to speed." Ben quickly turned into XLR8. "Bring it on." Will then said, 100 miles away we have our channel's news van, which is recording live on TV. Now those of you at home will notice a small picture-in-picture of their video, those of you here look to the Jumbotron. First one to get their wins. Will then fired a starting pistol and in a moment both raced off, but before Nemesis is out of sight Ben was on the Jumbotron with the news van. XLR8 was cleaning the camera as he said, "I think I won. Hi Grandpa. Hi Gwen, hi Kevin, hi Osaka, Tomo, Yomi Sakaki, Keirin, Kagura, and if you're watching Form Space, hi Grandma. Finally Jessica Jackson, I love you dear." In the crowd Jessica went, "I'll love you to Ben." Lucy then turned to her wife Jessie and asked, "Darling, why can't you be that romantic?" At that point Ben returned to the site and returned to human as he looked at a stunned Captain Nemesis and said, "I know I already won 2 out of 3 but let's to the final event anyway." Will then sighed as he said, "As much as I hate to say it, Ben Tennyson is showing good sportsmanship. Having already won he is agreeing to do the 3rd event anyway. Let's move on to the tug-of-war." Ben then became Diamond Head and said, "I want 4 arms." "Well, it'll do." He then grabbed his end of the rope and Nemesis grabbed his and tried to pull but Ben wasn't moving or budging. The captain growled as he pointed a wrist blast at Diamond Head which hit his chest making him drop his rope in shock. He wasn't hurt but everyone was gasping. Nemesis held his hands up in shock. It was a mistake, the thing malfunctioned and fired on its own. Will sighed and said, "I can't tell you if he is telling the truth or not, that's for you to decide, but we just watched the fall of a legend." Later that night. Ben as Armadillo battling Compton and his robotic minions easily drilling through their armor as he said, "You guys were a lot more power when Captain Nemesis battled you guys." He then dove under the ground and in moments the ground fell out form below them making them all fall on top of each other in a pit where Armadillo popped out form below and turned into Heat Blast. Heat Blast then fired off a massive fireball that melted the robots into the ground filling the hole and ending them. How could Captain Nemesis have had such a hard time battling these things? Maybe he's just coming to grips that he's not as young as he used to be. Maybe that's why he's been such a JRK to me. Is he just jealous my hero time is just starting and his is getting closer and closer to ending? Meanwhile Nemesis was face appeared on a Jumbotron and said, "Ben-10, I've grown sick of you stealing my spotlight. I released those robots to distract you while I did this." The camera then showed Jessica and Jennifer tied hanging over 2 pits of acid. Jessica was hanging on Nemesis' left, Jennifer to his right. Nemesis growled, "Meet me at my tower in 1 hour. I've removed all safeguards on my armor. I will end you." Heat Blast transformed into Jet Ray and flew off crying. At Nemesis Tower Echo Echo knocked down the door with a sonic scream. Spotlight. Being a hero isn't about fame and riches. It's about doing the right thing. Nemesis then said, "All I've ever done is for fame. When things were clam I paid people to act up so I could stop them." He then hit a button making both girls who were screaming lower into slowly, "Who will you save? The actress with a crush on you or the town home girl?" In a moment Echo Echo split into 2, the left Echo Echo turning into Jet Ray and the right one becoming Big Chill. Both flying aliens broke the chains and grabbed the girls, Jet Ray laser the chain, and Big Chill making the chain so cold it shattered. Both Bens land as Jennifer fainted and Nemesis's jaw dropped. Both aliens then became Echo Echo and remerged. Jessica then said, "Ben honey, warn a girl before you do some SHT like that." Nemesis then fired off laser making Ben turn into Chromastone quickly standing before the girls slowly absorbing the fire till he returned it to Nemesis with a bit of his one knocking him back. Nemesis got up his armor glowing brightly, "Why won't you lose?" Ben then became Water Hazard and fired off water making steam come off Nemesis as he said, "Because I'm the hero. I see you for what you are, a fame and money hungry bstrd. You lied about being a hero. You lied and made me respect you and look up to you. Well, no more." He then upped the water making the armor crack. Jessica said, "Right, the armor was overheating, now it's being chilled, it can't handle it." In moments the armor on Nemesis was broke and began to fall off. Ben then returned to human as he ran to Nemesis and punched him in the face and said, first Kangaroo Commando now Captain Nemesis. Why do all my heroes turn out to be the bad guys? Jessica walked over to him and put a hand on his shoulder. Honey, not everyone does the right thing for the right reasons. Ben then hugged her and said, yeah, let's just get out of here. Ben sounded sad as he walked out with Jessica and Jennifer. Later on at his house, Ben watched the news as Will said. A legend was driven to madness tonight. He did horrible things thanks to hate of Ben Tennyson. Now while I understand not liking him or being scared of the what if he turned evil question, but this actions tonight are unforgivable. So I regretfully have to say thank you to the alien for saving the lives of Jennifer Nocturne, and that other girl whoever she was. Ben turned it off and said, her name is Jessica Jackson. She's my girlfriend. Chiyo then walked in and said, Big brother, I'm sorry another one of your heroes turned out to be a bad guy. Ben rested his hand on chin on his hands. I know I should be used to it by now. Anyone I looked up to as a kid, is someone I have to stop. Chiyo then turned the news off and said, please smile big brother. Ben looked to her and petted her head. I'll be fine Chiyo, Jessica is okay, Nemesis is behind bars and Jennifer is also safe. Plus Will had to thank me. That will haunt him for the rest of his life. Ben cracked a faint smile as he got up and said, now I'm going to go to bed, it's been a long day. Meanwhile in Japan, Yukari was screaming at her class, phones up. Tomo then said, but Ben mentioned me on TV. Yukari then took her phone, did he mention me? Osaka then said, no. Yukari then growled and pulled out a box, then all phones in the box. Sakaki then pulled out her badge having gotten a message and Yukari said, is that important Sakaki? Sakaki read it and blushed, no just report on ship land at the Japanese plumber base for repairs and a little personal message form Pierce. Yukari blinked but Tomo jumped up and pinched Sakaki's checks, that's our Sakaki's half-alien boyfriend. Karen then screamed and cried, NOO. Ben was in the park with Jessica watching Chiyo play. Jessica smiled as she watched, so peaceful, hey this is kind of like how we met. She smiled and took Ben's hand. Then people started running as a man in a trench coat who was walking on two large metal tentacles that looked to be made of something bug-like showed up. Two more came from its back as it smashed a swing seat. Chiyo was hiding under the monkey bars and yelled, Big brother. In a moment a green flash was shown as Swampfire threw a fireball at the man knocking him away as he said, Victor Validus. I thought you were dead like the nanochips. Those things are made of nanochip. Swampfire then threw a fireball and the man's chest opened into a hole letting it pass through him before reforming. Swampfire's eyes widened, what the? The man then broke apart into a swarm of nanochip and flow at Ben who turned the dial quickly and became NRG and as the bugs land on him they heat up glowing red and melting together. In a moment NRG melt his way out of a large slab of nanochips. Okay now how are the chips working again? Chiyo then walked out and asked, what just happened? Her eyes were widened in shock. NRG became Ben and said, we were just attacked by a race of cyborg bugs. The omnitrix scanning them is what gave me nanomech, but I killed their queen, their hive mind shut down, how are they working again? Jessica walked up and said, you said they be cyborgs right? Then would it make sense that someone hacked the hive mind to turn them on? You know taken the queen's place. Ben looked at her, that is a good idea but sadly, the chips are a perfect mix of organic and technology their brains are organic computer. I don't even think a mechamopper could hack them. Chiyo blinked and said, why did Kevin pick this week to take Gwen and Henry to the auto show? Ben nodded and crossed his arms, yeah but I think I know somewhere we can go for help. A short while later Jessica was riding shotgun with Ben in the DX Mark 10, with Chiyo in the back seat. Jessica had her arms crossed, so who is this Elena girl? Ben kept his eyes on the road and said, an old friend whose father was the one who figured out the chips were sleeping, not dead. He sadly became infected by the queen of the hive, I had a micro showdown with said queen inside his skull as nanomech. Victor know the most about the chips he may be dead, but his daughter has all her old notes. Chiyo then comment, did you just say you battled a cyborg bug inside someone's head? Ben nodded, yeah, first time I used nanomech, but back to the point she even quit the plumber's academy to continue her father's work with the chips. They then pulled in and got out. Ben then knocked on the door and said, Elena is me. A voice then happily said, oh Ben come in. The door then opened and they walked in to see tanks holding buzzing nanochips. Jessica crossed her arms and looked at Ben, telling him with her eyes, they found their bad guy. In a moment Elena ran up to try and hug Ben but Jessica pulled him into her arms and said, like I told Jennifer, get your own man. Elena looked mad and crossed her arms and got in her face and asked, and you are? Jessica got in her face and said, Jessica Jackson, Ben's girlfriend. Elena growled and turned around. Chiyo then said, my name's Chiyo, I'm Ben's little sister. Elena then even looked at her and said, how can I help you Ben? Ben then said, a group of active nanochips pretended to be your dad and attacked me at the park and put my little sister in danger. Now I come in here and as far as the eye can see is buzzing nanochips. Elena crossed her arms, I reactivated them using the Queen's corpse as a controller, wherever those chips came from, it wasn't from here. She then blew a whistle making a swarm try to leave their tank as they were burned and zapped by the walls into dead bugs. My tanks destroy them if they try to leave my plans or to find a way to use them for good. And species of bugs have a queen for each colony, it's probably just another colony. Now I must be off, show yourselves out. Chiyo blinked in confusion, that was suspicious. As they left Jessica said, Ben honey she could easily turn off this cages to let them out. She then points to an empty tank and said, like this one. Ben looked down and said, she maybe just doesn't have enough nanochips to fill it up, I mean they experiment on them. I just don't want to have to arrest a friend. As soon as they walked outside they notice a building that had grown thin cartoonish legs, had a scary cartoonish face and cartoonish arms with clamps for hands. Chiyo blinked and said, what is this, a cartoon? The thing then tried to go smash Jessica but in a moment Ben got in front of her and became Humongosaur. The dinosaur alien held the claw back as he looked to Jessica and said, Jessica dear, can you do me a favor? Jessica smiled, jumped and turned the dial making the spikes pop out. In a moment Ben went ultimate and said, ultimate Humongosaur. The ultimate alien pushed the claw back and morphed his hands into Gatling guns and fired on the building, blasted into small piece of rubble, and from the rubble nanochips came out and flow into the lab form event. Jessica pointed at Ben's ultimate alien face and said, told you so. Chiyo blinked, wait, if Elena is controlling them then why did it try to smash Jessica? Jessica snapped her fingers, did you see her running up to Ben? The attack on the park was something she know would get Ben's attention, then since it involves the nanochips he would come to her. Chiyo gasped, then she saw you and got all mad, so now they are trying to remove you. She wants Big Brother event if it means murder. Big Brother, your friend is a Yandere. Ben returned to normal Humongosaur and smashed the door open and said, fine, you guys are right, come on, let's go get her. Ben then returned to human form and walked in with Jessica and Chiyo as nanochips came out of their tanks and morphed into Victor, only for Ben to become Heat Blast and burn the chips, melting them into statues as he walked to a locked door. Heat Blast melt through it to reveal a room with more tanks and pictures of Ben everywhere, all his forms from all his years of being a hero. He looked around and said, okay, she's a stalker. Heat Blast returned to human in a flash of red light as he sighed, Elena, come out and give yourself up. Make this easy on you, hand over the controls. Elena walked out and said, you really believed I turned the fake queen into a remote control? Ben blinked and asked, wait, fake? Elena smiled and said, the one in my dad was a fake or sub-queen who was made as a backup in case the real queen was destroyed, a second egg layer if you will, to speed up production. Jessica crossed her arms, and let me guess, the real one is in you. Elena laughed as she morphed into her nanochip form, no, I am the queen. The real queen and her drones merged into my body, making me the new queen and a nanochip human hybrid just like Nanomech. Ben growled and said, you played the first attack. Elena then said, Ben, don't you see I was all alone, no one else was like me. So I need someone. I am a queen, I need a king. So yes, I planned the first attack. Waiting till you would win and scan enough nanochip DNA to get a new transformation. The omnitrix won't allow its user to become a SLV to a hive mind, so it would make a hybrid transformation to protect your mind. Another nanochip human hybrid to rule beside me. Chiyo then jumped up scared yelling, Yandere. Super Yandere. Elena's nanochips then came out and formed a sports car. The nanochips made whatever I want. I can have anything I want. Become nanomech and rule beside me Ben. Elena then morphed into a copy of Jessica. I can even be her if you wish. Jessica then screamed, okay creepy. Ben made a tight fist as he yelled, you will never have me. Never. She then growled and the swarm went to attack them only for Ben to slam down on the dial and vanish. The nanochips that weren't part of Elena's body then stopped and turned green. They then formed a humanoid shape and an evolved Unimatrix symbol as a what sound like thousands of Ben said, ultimate nanomech. Elena tried to morph her hand into a saw only for the blade to turn green as the color spread up her arm making her scream as she was forced back into her true hybrid form. Ben sounds sad as he or the Legion of Nanochips said, don't fight it Elena, my ultimate version of them has more control than a queen. I can detect how much of you is nanochip, you're all chips. There is no human flesh or DNA left. You're not my childhood friend. You're just bug who copied her mind to pretend to be her. Around them chips not part of anything start to self-destruct. Ben looked down as he or his swarm said, I've sent the self-destruct command through them all, it'll all be over with soon. Elena's left arm then fell off the chips making it dead as she yelled, Ben stop. Ben looked sad as he said, you're already dead. And I won't let you drag anyone else into the grave with you. Soon Elena screamed as the chips that made her up fell apart and the swarm around Ben making a body fell apart as well. In a red flash Ben was back to normal in tears looking down. Chiyo's jaw dropped as she said, I have no words. Jessica ran up and hugged Ben, I'm sorry Ben. Ben hugged her and said, Elena's body was complete absorbed there was nothing left. The queen just began thinking she was Elena thanks to the memories she downloaded by mistake. Elena died long before her dad. Ben then turned and walked out, come on let's go. As they left one of the chips moved showing it still had some life in it. Meanwhile, at the Japanese plumber base, Sakaki was speaking with the owners of the ship that need repair the galactic enforcers. Teeny, Synaptak and replacing the currently powerless Ultimos Technorg. Technorg's outfit had changed, the black was replaced by yellow and the rest of the colors replaced by white. Technorg looked to Sakaki and said, so you know Ben, how is he? And how do you know him? Sakaki smiled and said, fine, but hating people with camera, and I know him as I'm friends with his little sister. Synaptak looked shocked, I didn't know he had a younger sibling. Teeny then said, so we only know him for one day, there is a lot we don't know about him. Technorg then said, it would explain his strength in battle, after all protecting a sibling will make a warrior out of you. A few days later at night Ben was big chill chasing after Dark Star with Kevin and Gwen. Ben yawned as he looked to Gwen, what did he steal from Kevin's garage? Gwen then looked to Ben, one of my spell books. Or the page holding the gate to anywhere spell, a spell I found after that events with Hope. It's a back door into any place. Dark Star was chanting in the spell as the weather became a lightning storm. Kevin then said, when the hell did he become a wizard? He touched the ground and absorbed the ground as he made his fist into a hammer. Gwen then said, I can only guess he learned how to handle mana when he absorbed my energy. She then tried to fire off an energy blast but lightning struck Dark Star making him vanish. Only leaving behind the gate to Legerdemain. Ben landed and returned to normal and said, that this dumb door again. Okay Gwen, crack this thing open. Gwen then looked to Ben, it's not that simple Ben, this kind of spell can only be cast while holding the page it was originally written on. I can't open it and also this time the gate appeared by the normal way so it's working right. Means team is moving the way it normal does in there. Kevin then looked confused and he was about to but Gwen said, Team moves faster in legerdemain minutes behind the door equals days outside it, and it won't close till Dark Star chose to leave. Ben sighed as he crossed his arms, and chance are now that he has endless mana to absorb out of thin air, he may never leave. Kevin then said, why don't I just absorb the door and rip it open again? He was about to touch the door but he was forced away. Gwen crossed her arms, because like I said it was summoned normally by the skeleton key spell, meaning its protect form that kind of stuff now. Kevin got up and looked around. They were in the middle of a park, and said, so what, we're baby sighting a door now? Ben turned into XLR8 said, I'll go get the coffee. Watching a door, this is an all-time low for us all. He then vanished in a blur. 3 days later Ben, Gwen, Kevin, Henry, Jessica and Chiyo were all looking at the door. Gwen looking at it with a spell book in hand, if I could just figure out the rest of the name. In a moment the door glowed and vanished. Chiyo blinked and said, wait, you said it would vanish when Dark Star chose to return, right cousin Gwen? Gwen nodded and Jessica, then okay, why isn't he stand in front of us? Care to show some light on us? Gwen held her hand out and said, simple spell cast, chose where the door leads on the way in and the way out. He chose to appear somewhere else, so the door moved to open up to where Michael want. Gwen's hand glow as a train appeared, but now we can track it. Kevin then said, Henry, go with Jessica. Henry nod. Ben then said, great, let's get a move on. Chiyo, go home with Jessica and Jessica. Jessica cut Ben off by missing him and saying, I know, stay out of trouble, dear, come on Chiyo, your big brother has got to work. Chiyo took Jessica's hand and said, good luck on your next adventure, big brother. Henry then took Jessica's other hand as they left. In a moment Gwen cast a spell making herself, Ben and Kevin vanish. They then reappeared in a power plant where they spotted Dark Star helmet off, looking normal, struggling to absorb the electricity. Why can't I absorb this energy? Gwen held her hand out and said, because you have grown to use to mana. He then turned and in a moment Dark Star turned to see Kevin, who just absorbed metal of one of the machines, and Ben, who had become 4 arms. Gwen held their hands and said, no need, boys. This is a simple thing. She then snapped her fingers and in a moment Michael returned to his weakened zombie-like form, making him scream. Gwen smiled, mana always wants to return to its home, Michael, it's a simple thing to send it where it wants to be. Dark Star then held out his hand, making a symbol on it glow as a door appeared, and he ran through it, making it close behind him. Gwen smiled and put a hand in front of Kevin to stop him from yelling, I saw that symbol on his hand, it's the other half of the door's name. She then used left hand to make the symbol appear on the door and her right hand to make the symbol Dark Star used appear. She then smiled as she brought her hands together, making the symbols merge, making the gate appear and open wide. Kevin made both his hands into mace and smashed them together and said, all right Gwen. They then ran through to appear in a castle to see Charmcaster and Dark Star in his golden form kissing. Ben, who was still 4 arms, held his stomach, I think I'm going to be sick. In a moment Dark Star charged and summoned rock creatures that attacked Ben and Kevin. Gwen then vanished and appeared by Charmcaster, hope he's using you. Charmcaster fired off a blast, can't you just be happy for me? 4 arms turned his dial and transformed into his ultimate form and start smashing the creatures easily as he said, Charmcaster, the only thing he wants is his looks and my cousin. Kevin then smashed some stone creatures and made his way to Dark Star, you can have the first, but not the second. Dark Star blast Kevin as he said, shut up. Kevin then flew back into the castle wall where he returned to normal, then touched the castle stone and absorbed it. I hope this is enchanted stone I'm absorbing. He then ran back out with a hammer hand as Dark Star fired off a beam. Dark Star's eyes widened as Kevin ran right through it and hit him in the face with the hammer. Kevin smiled, it was enchanted. Sweet. Gwen was still struggling with Charmcaster, and said, hope, look at him, what you see is a lie, you've seen his true self, haven't you? Charmcaster then heard Dark Star say, nothing will stop me, then fairest Gwen will be mine. She then looked at Gun angry, fairest GWN. Gwen held her hands out, it wasn't even a date. I swear. Charmcaster then waved her hands, making Dark Star's stone creatures vanish as she said, Michael. You're going to look at me and give me one reason to not believe Gwen. You're going to answer this question, what is my real name? Dark Star backed away nervously and stuttered for a moment. Brittany. Gwen looked away, not even close. Charmcaster then screamed as Ultimate Forearm's sad face said, well, he's a dead man. The Ultimate Alien's happy face then said, yeah, I know. The angry face then said, let's not go there please. Moments later they were back at the power plant, the door still up as Dark Star, now in his weakened state, again banged on it, calling out every name he could think of. Ben then returned too human and said, he changed the name to her own real one, he'll never guess it. Kevin then turned and said, and B can't absorb anything else other than mana. He's helpless now. Gwen sighed as she left with them, yeah, now come on, let's go home. In her castle, Charmcaster was sitting on her bed, legs tucked into her chest, crying, I feel so used. Dark Star, she then held her hand out and changed the name of the gate, I won't ever let you back in. Charmcaster then opened a window and looked out at Earth all over it, I don't want to be the bad guy. Why can't I have something good in my life? All I've had is hate, anger and loneliness. She sighed, I don't know why I can't have even one friend. She then looked to a school in Japan and said, wait, I think I do have one. Later that night, Kevin was checking the intergalactic news and smiled as he read out loud, Manny of the Plumbers has defeated Princess Luma in battle and the wedding is set for next week. Henry then walked up and said, I guess you're off the hook now, big brother. Kevin petted Henry's head and said, yeah, but that story stays between us, okay? Henry nodded. Henry then said, hey big brother, while you were gone I got in this argument over who was the stupider bad guy, she says it's Onimo, I say it's the Forever Knights. Kevin then said, I have to say the Forever Knights too, at least Onimo was twice able to use the watch against Ben. Henry smiled and jumped for joy, I know it. Meanwhile in Japan. It was after school and Sakaki was being followed by her friends. Tomo then said, please. Sakaki kept walking, no. Tomo then yelled, please. Sakaki then said, no. Yomi then said, Tomo, she can just bring us into top secret area just because you want to see alien. Osaka then said, I don't understand, want to look at aliens. Tomo then pointed at her, because you got a badge thanks to your magic little witch. Osaka then said, that reminds me I need to go buy a little black kitten. She then walked away making Sakaki blush. Kagura then shivered. Of all of us to get superpowers, why Osaka? Kaorin was crying, how could you miss Sakaki? Sakaki growled and said, who I date is my busnius. You see, this is why I live on base now. She then covered her mouth and everyone blinked. Sakaki covered her mouth and looked at their shocked faces and T said, my parents said I could not date a half-alien under their roof, so I left, at least I get my cat Maya now. Yomi pushed her glasses back up, how long ago was this? Sakaki turned and answered, last week. She continued her walk to the base. Tomo then waited before she asked, please. Yomi then hit Tomo on the head and said, stop it. Late one night, Gwen and riding shotgun in Ben's car as Ben drove, and he said, so Nemesis escaped and kidnapped Jennifer Nocturne again. Gwen then said, Ben, she's been visiting him every day in jail, it's fish. I mean, have you ever heard of Stockholm Syndrome? In a moment the back seat folded down and Chiyo popped out, she would never be with Nemesis. Gwen looked shocked, but Ben said, Chiyo, fix the seat and buckle up. Chiyo then got out, fixed the seat and buckled up. Gwen then looked to Ben, I take it she does this a lot. Ben nodded and said, yes she does, but let's not get sidetracked, tell me what's the plan, where we go, how we find them. The young witch point to the left, take a left, we're heading to the trailer park Jennifer grew up and her mother still lives there, I'm hoping she'll give us something Jennifer used to own so I can use a tracking spell. Chiyo blinked, wait, Jennifer grow up in a trailer park? Ben then parked and they got out, they then walked in and knocked on a trailer and said, Mrs. Nocturne, it's BEN10, your daughter either been kidnapped or trying to elope with a supervillain. Chiyo threw her fist in the air, said, she would never be with a supervillain, she's too nice. Mrs. Nocturne came out and said, little lady, she's an actor, she is paid to lie, and make people believe them. She then said, "You're that alien kid, tell you what, I'll help if you turn into an alien for me. Come on, let an all-alone woman see an alien." Ben then turned into Wildvine and said, "Wildvine." Mrs. Nocturne smiled, pulled Ben into a hug and took a picture on her phone before saying, "Thank you. Now well, there isn't much I can say. I have seen her since she turned 14, dropped out of school and ran away from home to Hollywood." Chiyo blinked in confusion. "That's not what she says about her." Mrs. Nocturne then said, "Little lady, I already told you acting is just lying. Those who tell the best lies make it big. My daughter made it big, so she is an amazing liar. Like she says her dad is dead, truth is he ran away and left me as soon as I got pregnant." Gwen looked sad. "I'm sorry, but we were hoping you had something that used to belong to her so we could track her." Mrs. Nocturne then reached into her door and pulled out a rag doll. "I do, her old doll, the only thing I have left of my child. If it either saves her or stops her from making me a grandchild with a supervillain, you guys can have it." Gwen took it and said, "Thanks you." Ben then returned to normal and said, "And I'm sorry, miss." Mrs. Nocturne then said, "Don't be, I bought the lies her daddy told me hook, line and sinker, and sadly my daughter got her old man's acting skills. I really hope you find her. She may not love me or even visit me, but she's still my baby." Ben then nodded and said, "Trust me, I'm not the give up or accept failure kind of guy." Chiyo looked back as they left, said, "This means everything in Jennifer's biography is a lie." Ben put a hand on his little sister's shoulder. "Chiyo, when I was 10 I learned the hard way you can't trust actors. What you're going through is the same thing I went through with Kangaroo Commandos." They all then got back into car and drove to a motel, and Ben looked to Gwen, asked, "This the place?" Gwen looked at the glowing doll. "It's light fading, yes, but it's getting hard to track. People change over time, making it harder to track someone with something they own a long time ago, and it's getting harder and harder by the second." Ben then opened his door and said, "Then you go talk to the manager, I'll see if track her on my own." He then slammed down the dial, becoming Blitzwolfer, and he said, "Let me get a sniff of the doll's scent. Isn't something you can change, only mask." Ben then sniffed the doll and followed his nose with Chiyo behind him. He then came to a room door and said, "Okay Chiyo, you go hide around the corner, I'm going in." In a moment the werewolf-like alien turned the dial on its chest, changing into Ghost Freak. Chiyo then left as Ben phased through the door and said, "Let's look around and see if this is the right room." Ghost Freak then opened a drawer to see one of Captain Nemesis' gauntlets as he said, "Well, now that is the best clue I could hope for." He then grabbed the gauntlet. In a moment a red light returned him to human as Captain Nemesis in his prison outfit came out with a crowbar. Ben ducked out of the way, dropping the gauntlet, as he slammed down the dial. In a moment Ben was Clockwork, who fired a team ray, making the crowbar rust into metal dust as he said, "Okay, now care to explain where the girl is?" In a moment a laser blast hit Clockwork's right arm, making him fall over as he spotted Jennifer using the gauntlet, and he said, "An elope it is." Before he could get up a second beam hit his chest and the two ran out. Moments later Chiyo ran in. "Big brother, Jennifer is with Nemesis." She then screamed when she spotted Ben on the floor, unable to move. Clockwork had a hole in his chest and said, "Chiyo, big brother needs you to fix his intern gear system to restore his ability to move." The light in Clockwork's eyes and the omnitrix dial on his chest were gone. Chiyo ran over to him and cried as she spotted a maze of gears out of place. Ben then said, "I can feel they are still where they belong, just knocked out of place. I just need you to push the gears back into place." Chiyo then pushed some loose gears back in, and in a moment they start moving as light returned to Clockwork's eyes and dial light back up. He took his left hand and hit it, timing out, and Ben got up holding his right arm. "I think it's broken." Chiyo was crying, "Nemesis will pay for this." Ben then said, "Chiyo, Jennifer is the one who do this to me." Chiyo then cried and screamed, as Gwen showed up. Gwen then said, "Guys, the doll stopped working altogether. Jennifer has changed too much." Ben then spotted the Nemesis gauntlet and pointed to it with his foot, then used this. Later on Swampfire was melting a door in a vet's office down, his right arm dried up and yellow. "I know I'm not one to talk, but this place stinks." They then spotted a dead body in a surgical table and Chiyo fainted. Gwen then said, "Looks like the vet was an unlicensed plastic sergeant, and they killed him to cover the trail. Nasty." Swampfire then said, "Yeah, Chiyo is going to have nightmares now." He then touched his arm and Gwen tried to hold her hand up. Ben, you need to get your arm check out. Ben looked at her and point to the arm's color getting greener. Gwen, it'll heal quicker with me as an alien, and beside that we have something to finish up. And as murder has been added to the crime list, we need to keep going. Gwen then picked up Chiyo as they left and followed the gauntlet to an office building where the guards looked to be dead, but Gwen got closer and sighed in relief. They are still breathing. Ben then looked to Chiyo and said, stay in the car, Chiyo. Chiyo nodded and Ben and Gwen walked in. Gwen looked at the gauntlet and says they are below us. She then held out her hand and blasted a hole and made a mana platform that lowered them below to see Jennifer and Nemesis waiting for a large Nemesis armor to charge. Nemesis then turned and fired with a laser form the gauntlet Ben drops twin. In a moment Ben became Upchuck, whose arm was shockingly thin, and he looked at it. Really? He then used his tongue to pull the debris into his mouth, where he fired an explosive blast ball at Nemesis, knocking him back. In a moment Jennifer got into the mostly charged armor and punched Ben. Get away from him. In a moment Ben was hit hard enough to knock him out and make him faint. Gwen then threw a mana blast at the armor, knocking it into the charging station, making Jennifer inside scream in pain as she was shocked. Nemesis screamed and quickly opened it and pulled out an injured Jennifer. I'm going to give up. They'll take you to a hospital. They'll think I did this, but at least you'll be okay. I love you and I'm sorry. Jennifer then said, I love you too, and fainted. The next day Ben was at his house watching the news as his arm was now in a cast. Ben sighed as he said, well, another low point. Jessica put a hand on his good arm as he said, how so? The bad guy is back in jail. Ben then looked at her and said, a man is dead, people are injured, Jennifer is just going to keep going back to him, and my arm. Even one person injured is a complete failure, Jessica. Ben's voice was filled with regret. Jessica hugged him. Ben, you did your best. Ben looked at the omnitrix on his wrist. It uses to be so easy. I used to always save the day without one person being injured. Then I took it off, and now look at me, everywhere I go I'm putting people in danger and letting people get hurt. Maybe I'm out of shape form trying to be normal. Maybe this is the consequence of trying to be something other than a hero, I just don't know. Jessica kissed him. You're out of shape is all, you'll get your growth back, Ben, just relax, and instead of focusing on what the world thinks of you, focus on what you think of yourself. Ben gave a faint smile as he said, I guess you're right. A month later, in a dig site. A group of Forever Knights were digging, trying to open a seal, and once it was open they screamed as creatures known as Lucubra appeared and charged their weapons, doing nothing against the monster as they feed. One young knight ran to a console and hit a button to send a message to the plumbers. It sickens me to say this, but the world's safety depends on the aliens. We are no match for what we unknowingly have unleashed. The knight then screamed as a Lucubra pinned him, and its tongue covered his face, and the extra-dimensional form of life began to eat the knight's mind. Late in the night an old man was sitting in a chair at his retirement home when his eyes widened, sensing something. The old man looked to a coin with the symbol of the Forever Knights on it and held it tight as he got up and raced out of the retirement home into the streets. Meanwhile, Kevin was driving himself, Gwen and Ben. He then asked out loud, so any idea what munched on the knight's head? Gwen opened her spell book. Well, it looks like a Lucubra, a demon that feeds on minds, leaving their victims mindless puppets for their father Diagon. Ben then leaned up from the back seat and said, Diagon as in a thing the Flame Keepers circle worship? I know, it was a cult. They then pulled out to the dig site and noticed Forever Knights walking up chanting, Hail Diagon, as they point their weapons at Kevin's car, making them all jump out as laser fire destroyed it. Kevin growled as he touched a piece of his car and absorbed the metal. You BSTRDS. You wrecked my ride. The Lucubra then showed up and fired on them as well. Gwen made a mana wall as Ben slammed down on the dial and turned into Buzzshock. Ben's eyes widened. Buzzshock. I want Frankenstrike. Well, use what I got. Ben touched the ground and said, Kevin, get off the ground. Kevin made a metal shield with his left arm and jumped onto a rock, as Buzzshock sent a powerful electric shock through the iron-rich ground. The mindless Forever Knights fell over in pain as they were shocked into unconsciousness. The Lucubra then fired a laser beam at Ben, who flew out of the way and touched the dial, morphing into Ditto. Ben then looked at himself and said, "Who's this going to help?" He then turned the dial again, becoming a guy who fired off laser from his eyes on the extra-dimensional monster, and he said, "Better." Gwen then fired of a mana blast, the hits not doing anything to the Lucubra. Kevin then ran up, his hands morphed into mace and hit it, knocking it back, making it cry in pain. Ben blinked with all of Guy's eyes and looked to Gwen with them. How come Kevin's punch did damage? Gwen then said, "The book said they are weak against iron, and he absorbed his car's metal. I guess there was some iron in it." Ben then turned the dial and became chromastone, as he said, "That gives me an idea." He then raced off, and as the monster fired its laser, chromastone jumped in the way, absorbed the ray and fired it back on it. The thing was knocked back into the dig site where they saw the shattered seal. Gwen ran in and said, "Wait, that's a spell seal, get it back in the pit. I think I can store the spell trapping this thing." The thing jumped on Ben and tried to eat his mind but couldn't, and Ben laughed and punched it off. "Can't eat rocks." Chromastone then fired off one of his own blasts, but it did nothing. Kevin then ran in and hit it in the head once, knocking it back. He then hit it again and kept hitting it, moving it back, as he said, "Ruin my ride. You, other dimensional son of a b." Kevin then hit it in the head with both mace fists, knocking it back into the pit, into the damaged seal. Gwen then held out her hands and missing part of the seal reappeared, now a pink color, locking the thing once more inside. Ben returned to human and smiled, "Well, that's over, I guess, but what about the knights? They can't go without their minds." Gwen crossed her arms, "I'll see what I can do." They then heard Azumaga's voice say, "But sadly we have bigger problems." They then saw Jessica getting out of Ben's car with Azimuth on his shoulder, Chiyo and Henry behind her. Azimuth then said, "The Lucubra feed the energy was sent to Diagon, returning power to him. His heart is beating, so now his herd and my greatest mistake, that crusade sword, are now trackable. Right now the Flame Keeper's circle and all the now unite fractions of the Forever Knights are wearing over it." Azimuth then said, "My teleporter is messed up, I'll explain on the way." Later on, as Ben and a repaired thanks to jury rig Kevin's car were driving. Ben was behind the wheel of his with Azimuth using a badge to tell the story to Kevin and Gwen. Azimuth looked sad as he said, "And such with Ascalon within Diagon's heart, keeping it pinned and powerless, holding its owner in place, I had no choice but to leave it there. Removing the sword would return power to Diagon enough to break the seal holding him away. With the courage made because of it, I vowed to never make another weapon." He then sadly said, "I then began working on the omnitrix as way to protect Liv, to bring peace as an apology to the universe. Hoping it would redeem myself in Zenitha's eyes, but she never did forgive me. I made one mistake that made the Incursions what they are, yet that same mistake stopped Diagon." Jessica looked down at Azimuth on the dashboard and said, "That's why you kept yourself away from others, you never forgave yourself." The Galvin nodded and said, "That is correct, Miss Jackson." Both cars then stopped at a pit. With it a war was breaking out among the Forever Knights, Flame Keeper's circle and the Plumbers. Ben got out and looked to Jessica and Chiyo and said, "Please guys, stay here." He then slammed down on the dial, becoming Cannonbolt. In a moment he went ultimate and rolled over the edge and fell down the pit. Azimuth then said, "The sword and hearts are at the bottom, let's hope Ben can handle this." Chiyo then said, "Big brother can handle anything." Gwen and Kevin then got up. Kevin looked to Henry and said, "Now Henry, you stay here with Chiyo, Jessica, and Azimuth, and if anyone tries to hurt you guys, I want you to hit them with one big laser, okay little brother?" Henry nodded and said, "I got it, big brother." Kevin then absorbed the metal of his car again, and Gwen formed a platform to lower them into the battle in the pit. Meanwhile at the button, Ben landed and unrolled for a moment to see a tunnel and said, "This is going to end horrible for one of the three groups here, I just hope it isn't the Plumbers." Ultimate Cannonbolt rolled off at high speed and unrolled at the end to see Vilgax now back in his normal form, holding the sword in its armor, slashing the cult leader in half while laughing. Ben growled and re-rolled and charged at Vilgax, only for him to spin the sword, making a whirlwind blow Ultimate Cannonbolt back away with enough force to make him return to being Ben in midair. Ben fell to the ground on his back. Ben got up and said, "Vilgax, have you any idea what you've done?" Vilgax held the sword and said, "Found the power to finally end you." Before he could do anything, a seal appeared on the wall as a tentacle burst out and grabbed Vilgax, making him drop the sword as he screamed, "Help me, Ben Ben then crossed his arms and said, "No." Vilgax then mutated into a half-lucubra state and was released and charged at Ben, making him turn into forearms before going ultimate. Ultimate forearms. Vilgax punched Ben and the ultimate held back the fist, but it took all 6 arms to hold back one of Vilgax. Ben's eyes widened, all of them. The sad face then said, "Well, this isn't good." Vilgax's other fist then punched Ben out of the tunnel back to the bottom of the pit, where he noticed an old man walking down the stairway leading down. Vilgax laughed, "I can hear his voice in my head. Saying even though the seal is broken he can only appear if one of his servants says his name. He wants me to say his name to summon him. But I won't. I shall destroy Ben-10 at long last." The old man then grabbed the sword and was covered in armor with his youth restored. The knight then fired a beam from his sword, knocking Vilgax away as he said, "I am Sir George the First Knight. I hate your kind alien and you hate mine." But he most not say Diagon's name. Ultimate forearms returned 2 normal forearms, and he touched the dial and became Humungosaur as he said, "So truce till Vilgax is really a nicely fired plate of calamari, got it." He then went ultimate and fired his missile at Vilgax. Sir George fired off a beam at Vilgax as he sent a message to the Forever Knights, "My fellow knights. The Herald of Diagon has arrived. He must be destroyed before he speaks his MSTR's name." To make this happen we had to make a deal with the aliens and the human traitors. We fight against Diagon's force together. Then we settle things in one final battle once Diagon has been beaten. Vilgax charged at him as Sir George charged back and went to slash him, only for Vilgax to sidestep the slash and hit the knight in the head, sending him flying back, making him drop the sword. Vilgax then fired a laser from his mouth, making a hole in the knight's chest, killing him. "I've done with my MSTR, couldn't kill the first knight." At that moment Ultimate Humungosaur cracked his knuckles, only for the Utimatrix to beep and a red flash to return him to human. Ben tried to change, but the Utimatrix was in the red. Vilgax then grabbed Ben and laughed, "Finally I shall destroy you, boy." Ben slammed on the dial and said, "This can't be how it ends. I won't let." In a moment Vilgax was about to fire his laser, but when it hit Ben the boy absorbed it. The Utimatrix was no longer on his wrist, his jacket was gone, and the evolved Utimatrix symbol was on his chest, behind him a green ghostly image of Chromastone, and Ben fired the laser back at Vilgax, knocking home away and making the monster drop him. Ben landed and looked at himself, "Wait, did I just somehow go ultimate? Letting me use all my form's powers at once? Cool." Ben then held his hands out as Ultimate Swampfire's image appeared behind him, and he fired off a large white and blue burst for fire on Vilgax, knocking the mutated alien warlord back into the seal, holding Diagon back. Vilgax got up, burned as he said, "This can't be happening." In a moment large crystal spikes that sparkled with green light inside popped out of the ground, piercing Vilgax's body, stopping him from moving. Vilgax struggled, still alive, as Ben walked up and said, "Don't struggle, I used the evolved version of Diamondhead's powers to make this. Ben then crossed his arms as Ultimate Waybig's image appeared behind him. A cosmic ray was charging as Ben said, "Game over, squid face." As the beam fired hit him, Vilgax screamed, "With my last breath I curse you, Diagon." The seal behind the now fried, seemingly lifeless Vilgax then shattered as Diagon's tentacles came out. Ben's eyes widened as he ran off with XLR8 speed out of there up the stairs. The seemingly dead Vilgax then laughed, showing he was still alive. "One way or another tonight Ben-10 will die." As Ultimate Ben raised up the stairs set, he grabbed Kevin and Gwen and said, "The thing is free, and somehow I went ultimate. Now I got all my alien powers." In a moment Ben was setting them all down next to Jessica, Azimuth, Henry and Chiyo as Diagon in the form of a giant squid float out of the pit and roared, sending out a shock wave. Gwen quickly made dome over them. Jessica looked to the activate ultimate symbol on Ben's chest and said, "What is this?" Kevin then said, "I'm as freaked out by Ultimate Ben as anyone else, but let's focus on the giant demon that just got loose." The shockwave then stopped as the plumber, Forever Knights, and Flame Keeper Circle members came out of the pit, now in the Flame Keeper's circle's battle deer, chanting, "All hail Diagon." Azimuth then said, "Mass mind control." Gwen dropped her dome as she read her mana-covered hands, "Just great. And where is the sword that beat this thing last time?" Ben then said, "I think it's still at the bottom of the hole." Behind him Heat Blast Image appeared as he threw fireballs at the minions. The minion in moments began to target Ben, Gwen and Kevin, not paying any mind to Jessica, Henry, Chiyo and Azimuth. Azimuth then said, "Well, now looks like Diagon doesn't view us as a threat, we can use that." Henry was scared and watched as one of the minions appeared out of nowhere and hit Kevin in the back of the head with a fireball-like energy orb that knocked him out. Henry's eyes glow orange and he said, "Leave my big brother alone." In a moment he fired off one massive energy beam at Diagon that forced him back. Jessica pulled out her energy pistol and started firing. Azimuth hopped on to Chiyo's shoulder and said, "Chiyo, we need to get to the sword." Chiyo remembered her dream, in it she grabbed a sword and said, "Right." She then ran off for the pit, no one even paying attention to the young girl. Meanwhile, half a world away. In Japan. Yukari and Naomo were hugging and shaking under a mana dome made by Osaka. In it with them were Yomi, Tomo, Sakaki, Pierce, Keirin, and Kagura. Tomo was freaking out at what looked like tribal warriors throwing fireballs. "What the hell is going on?" Osaka then said, "I seen this in my spell book, well, the copy of Gwen's, but this is the sign of Diagon, the demon form beyond this realm's return. It states all would become his slaves. So this guys are just people cursed into being slaves to a demonic squid." Naomo was crying, "I wish I could say I didn't believe that." Kagura was crying anime tears, "I don't want to be enslaved." Yomi was screaming, "Why does it have to be a squid?" Tomo was crying and on her knees, "We're all going to die and I never even kissed a boy." Sakaki the Pierce held each other quietly, as they spotted the cracks in Osaka's mana dome. Keirin was crying, "Horrible, at least I die with Miss Sakaki." In a moment the minions of Diagon were frozen in place at the moment Osaka's dome shattered. Osaka then spotted Charmcaster, who was holding a black cat, and Maya. In a moment Maya jumped into Sakaki's arms and the black cat went to Osaka. Osaka pet her cat, "Crystal boy, you're okay." And hi Hope. Hope then held out her hands making a gate appear, who's to wait this out in another dimension. In a moment Yukari grabbed Naomo and raced through it. Everyone else walked into Legerdemain making the gate close. The sky was different now, it was now a window to Earth, to Diagon. Osaka then said, "Looks like Legerdemain is reacting to Diagon." She then pet her cat and said, "Go Ben, go. You are our only hope." The battle then showed Ben with the image of Ultimate way big behind him as he fired off an evolved cosmic ray on Diagon, making it fall back a bit. The thing then tried to grab him only for Ben to avoid with XLR 8 speed. Tomo blinked and said, "Wait, Ben didn't transform, what's going on?" Charmcaster shrugged, "I don't know, somehow the ultimate turned into a symbol on his chest, now he has all his alien form's powers." Yomi adjust her glasses, "Then I don't think he can lose like that." They watch as Diagon fired a beam at Ben only for Alien X to appear behind him and for Ben to be unaffected by the blast. The alien behind him then became Ultimate Humongousaur as Ben fired of organic missiles on Diagon. Diagon roared, making his minions focus on Ben, not even bothering with his teammates. Ben looked around as Ultimate Echo appeared behind him and green sonic disc came out and made a dome of sound around him, knocking them back. It worked last time against this guys. Meanwhile in the pit, Chiyo was hiding with Azimuth on her shoulder, secretly watching the mutate Vilgax use a plumber communication device to make a call. Vilgax said, "Siphon, get over here. And bring the power absorption device." One the other end a "Yes my lord," was heard. The mutated Vilgax then smashed the device and walked away, and out of the corner of his eyes spotted Chiyo, making her yell. Vilgax grabbed her and spotted Azimuth on her shoulder and grabbed him too. "You must be this Chiyo Tennyson I've heard about, the younger sibling of Ben Tennyson." Chiyo was struggling and said, I don't know what you're planning but you won't get away with it. Vilgax growled, you even sound like your accursed brother. I could crush you like a bug, but I won't. You've been shown the future through your dreams. That is a power I'll need to HRNSS once my plans are complete and your brother is left a lifeless corpse. Vilgax then dropped her an azimuth and said, and above all else there is nothing an old frog and a little girl can do to stop my MSTR plan. He then ran off laughing evilly. Chiyo was pale and shivering and in tears but she took a deep breath and said, calm down Chiyo, you need to do this. For Mom, Dad, Grandpa, Cousin Gwen, your friends, and for Big Brother. My turn to be the hero. Chiyo then picked up azimuth and ran down the stairs remembering all the good times. I won't let them down. It's hero time. Azimuth smiled as he thought aloud, you've grown a lot from the scared little girl I first meet. Chiyo, you've become brave, just like every Tennyson, and his big brother gave you one great give, his never give up spirit. Chiyo smiled as she continued to run. Meanwhile back with the battle. Ultimate Ben was using Wildvine's powers to grab the minions in vines to hold them down as he said, I can do this. In a moment a red beep happened and Ben found his jacket back and the Matrix back on his wrist in the green. Diagon laughed, you are no longer the sum total of all life. Now all life shall fall. In a moment Diagon tried to smash Ben with tentacle only for Way Big to appear and knock them away. In a moment Way Big went ultimate and said, I may not be Ultimate Ben anymore but I'm still BEN10, I'll never give up. Ultimate Way Big then flew up charging right into Diagon's face as he said, I'll keep fighting no matter what. Diagon grabbed Ben in this tentacle and began to slam the giant ultimate into the ground over and over while his friends watched helplessly. Diagon spoke, don't let my flesh-based form fool you, in my true state I am pure energy. You cannot win against me. Ultimate Way Big then made energy disc and used them to cut himself free from the tentacles as he said, it doesn't matter, I'm a hero, I won't stop fighting no matter what. I know I may not survive the night, but I won't surrender. Ben crossed his arms firing the ultimate cosmic ray at Diagon knocking him back. In a moment the cut-off tentacles turned into energy and reformed onto Diagon as it got up, your resistance is futile. Ultimate Way Big jumped on Diagon and began to punch him over and over, even if it stops you from winning even for a moment I'll keep fighting. In a moment Diagon became a large snake and swallowed Ben whole. Down below Jessica screamed. Gwen's jaw dropped as she fired a mana blast at one of Diagon's minions. Henry faint while Kevin said, dude. In a moment big chill flow out of his stomach and went ultimate and breath ice fire on Diagon's face, you won't win that easily. Diagon changed back to his squid form and roared, die insect, he then fired off a beam hitting Ben only for the when it stopped the beam to reveal. NRG without his armor floating his mouth open having eaten the blast, taste your own beam, he then fired off a beam from his mouth just as powerful as the one he was just hit with. Knocking Diagon back. Jessica put her hands together and breathed a sigh of relief, don't scare us like that Ben honey. One of Diagon's tentacle then knocked down NRG making him hit the ground making a large crater where he timed out into Ben. Diagon prepared to fire as he said, Noun shall defeat me. In a moment the beam fired and Pisfin appeared on a flying platform holding the power training device where the beam and Diagon was absorbed. Into it. Kevin just blinked and asked, was that a good or a bad thing? Gwen then said, Kevin, Diagon is a pure energy being, having his powers stolen like that means death, and keep in mind Pisfin worked for Vilgax, and that's Vilgax's power stealing machine, what do you think? At that moment the mutate Vilgax got out of the pit and said, you are late. Pisfin then bowed and said, sorry my lord, he then fired a beam at Vilgax and in moments Vilgax was a large giant gloating version of his own head. Vilgax laughed insanely as Ben got up, I have now killed and replaced Diagon. I am unstoppable. Kevin blinked and said, I just had to jinx it. This is way worse. He then picked up his little brother. Vilgax then appeared before Ben in his mutated form. Time for your death Ben Tennyson. As Vilgax charged for Ben, Ben slammed down on the matrix and in a green flash we heard a yell of Atomix. The new alien was punched in the chest by the powered-up Vilgax, sending High sliding back 5 feet, but Ben didn't fall and he said, "I should have guessed you won't die, squid face." Automix put his hand on his Unimatrix symbol and said, "This is how it always is, me versus you." In a second the spikes came out and in a green blinding flash Automix went ultimate. The new ultimate looked nothing like its normal form. It was a glowing green energy being who looked like a silhouette of Ben. It even had Ben's face but without a nose. Ben then yelled out, "Ultimate Atomix." He then held his hand out, firing a blast of Automix energy at Vilgax, knocking him back, leaving Vilgax stunned. Ben then said, "You got the powers of an energy being now, so do it." Ben and Vilgax then charged at each other. As they trade punches, Vilgax growled, "Soon your transformation will end, leaving you weak and human. You are just prolonging your life." Ben took to the air and fired another Automix energy blast as he said, "Then I'll just have to beat you 8 minutes. Watching this, Gwen said, "It's like he's become an anodite." Kevin then said, "Well, we knew he had it in him." Jessica jumped up and cheered, "Go Ben. Go. Take down Ultimate Vilgax." In Legerdemain the people watching were stunned. Yukari screamed, "What is this?" Nyamo crossed her arms, "Someone took all of the demon's power and is now focusing it all on killing Ben. I don't like this." Charmcaster sighed and said, "Ladies, this is Ben we're talking about, he always wins. Vilgax's fall, it's only a matter of time. One of the reason I changed sides." Osaka petted her cat and said, "And plus he looks like his grandma, the energy being now." Pierce crossed his arms, "Ben always does the impossible, this will be no different." Tomo then jumped up and cheered, Ben. Go BEN10. If he can't do it, we're all dead, go BEN10. Meanwhile, back with the fight. Vilgax transformed back into his giant floating head form and used his tentacles to smash Ultimate Automix, only for the ultimate to heat up and burn through them, and he flew up and punched Vilgax right between the eyes as his tentacles healed. Vilgax roared and fired off a giant red laser, only for Ben to hold his hands out, stopping the blast when it touched him. Ben smirked as he made it turn green and double in size as he said, "Here, have it back." He then fired it off at Vilgax, knocking him down into the desert below, making an impact crater. Ben crossed his arms, "This energy being thing is in my BLD, squid face. You can't win." Vilgax roared as he got back up and used his beard to smash Ben into the ground. Vilgax then took back on his mutated form and charged, trying to punch Ben while he was down, only for Ben to hold his fist back and say, "You've been trying to kill me since I was 10. If you couldn't beat me back when I was just some kid, what makes you think you can beat me now that I'm older and way stronger?" Ben then pushed Vilgax's fist back, making him stumble back as Ben got up and said, "All this time I've learned, grown, changed and improved, and you're still the same villain. Still wanting the omnitrix. Still can't beat me. Still can't defeat BEN10. Ultimate Automix held his hands out and fired an energy blast, knocking away Vilgax. Vilgax roared as he charged again blindly, and Ben easily avoided the strikes. Ben laughed, "You know what's funny? You're the strongest you've ever been, yet you still can't win. You're so pathetic, it's funny." Vilgax roared and tried to use both his hands to smash Ben, only for Ben to stop them with one hand. Ben then punched Vilgax in the face, sending him into the sky. "You will never win." Vilgax got up and roared in rage. Meanwhile, in the pit, Chiyo was panting, finally making it to the bottom. Azimuth was on her shoulder, patting her on the back. "Breath, Chiyo, breath." Chiyo panted as she spotted the sword and walked to it. "Can't it close now?" As soon as she touched it, she stopped panting and felt energized, as she lifted the sword, which was taller than her. Sooner Ascalon changed size to fit her as she was covered in its armor, her hair now long behind her back. Chiyo shouldered at the shoulder opposite of Azimuth and smiled, "Got it, don't worry big brother, I'm coming." At that moment she saw Ultimate Automix hitting the top of the pit. She never saw the form, but the evolved Unimatrix symbol on his chest showed it was Ben. "Big brother." Azimuth nodded. "He must have evolved a life form into an energy being, amazing. Not as amazing as the evolved human form, using human adaptability to use all his other transformations power, but still amazing." The giant squid head of Vilgax then flew over, making Chiyo's jaw drop. Azumanga blinked, so this was his plan to steal all of Diagon's powers, killing the beast and replacing it. Chiyo then spotted Vilgax landing in his mutate form, yelling, "Looks like I do win this time, Ben-10." Chiyo then ran faster than a normal human, but nowhere near as fast as XLR8 up the stairs. A red flash returned ultimate automix to human, and right as Vilgax was about to smash Ben, Chiyo appeared and held out the sword, which his fist hit. Vilgax's eyes widened as he spotted the sword's blade in the flesh of his hand. He then removed his hand from the blade and screamed as his power was being sucked from him into the sword. Vilgax fell back. "No, Diagon's power. And all the other powers I stolen are leaving me." Chiyo smirked as she held the sword with a smirk. She watched as Vilgax returned to normal and she smiled and said, "Now all those stolen powers are back in the hands of good, you lose." Vilgax roared as he drew his sword and said, "I won't lose to a little girl." Chiyo then span the blade, making a whirlwind that blasted him out of the pit, and she said, "I'm not just a little girl. I'm Chiyo Tennyson, and like my big brother I'm a hero." Vilgax landed in his normal form near Kevin, Gwen, Henry and Jessica. Gwen's hands glow as Kevin made metal sword out of his hands, beating time. Meanwhile in the pit, Chiyo stabbed the sword into the ground, sending out a shock wave to undo all that Diagon did. Around the world his brain-washed minions left frozen when he died returned to old free selves. In Ledger Domain, the window allowing them to watch was closing. Kaorin was stunned. Did Chiyo just save the world? Yomi adjusted her glasses and said, "Yes, she did. Yes, she did." Sakaki smiled and flipped her hair. "Well, she is a Tennyson, that kind of is what they do best." Charmcaster then opened the gate to where Ben and his team were and said, "Then go celebrate with her." They all nodded, and while Charmcaster tried to walk away, Osaka grabbed her hand and said, "You're coming to Hope." Meanwhile back in the pit, Chiyo was jumping for joy as she said, I did it." Ben got up and smiled and petted her head, making the helmet fall over her eyes. "That you did, little sister." Azumanga then hopped off Chiyo's shoulder and coughed to get focus on him. Chiyo then put the sword into the ground before him as her armor left her, and she said, "Right, you probably want to go dispose of this now." Chiyo was left in a pink sweater, orange shorts, white knee-high socks and brown shoes as she said, "Well, easy come easy go." Azumanga then hit the badge on his belt. "Eunice, is the teleporter repaired?" Eunice's voice said, "Yes, it is, Dad." Azumanga then smiled as he touched the sword, making it vanish. He then looked to Ben and said, "Now as for the finished model omnitrix." Ben then cut him off as he held the omnitrix. "Thanks, but I wouldn't have stood a chance without the extra power of this thing, so I think I'll keep it." Azumanga smiled as he hopped onto it and made a small filter appear. He then put it on the omnitrix and said, "Which is why I made this." He then hopped on as the omnitrix changed. It now covered the back of Ben's hand completely with 4 white dots on his knuckles. The dial was in the middle with 4 white tubes leaving from it to the edges of it. 2 black buttons were on side the dial, and his hand was covered in a fingerless glove. Ben looked at it puzzled, and Azumanga said, "The filter has fixed all the bugs from the thing, limited dial location, to clothing errors, and added everything the finished omnitrix has that it lacked, like fully enteral DNA storage, meaning it no longer needs Primus to work." Ben smiled and said, "Thanks, Azumanga." Azumanga then smiled, "Now my finished omnitrix can't go unused, and Chiyo, you gave up the most powerful thing in the universe after saving the world. That gives you a reward." He then pointed to her left wrist. Chiyo spotted a glow around it and rolled it up and gasped as her eyes widened. On her left wrist was the finished omnitrix. The green parts of it quickly turned pink, leaving Chiyo's eyes widened. Azumanga smiled and said, "I trust your big brother will teach you how to use it now, bye." He then touched his belt and vanished. Chiyo's eyes widened at it and she touched it, making face of the aliens show up. From above Tomo's voice yelled, "Chiyo, we watched it all in another dimension. How awesome is this?" Ben smiled as he turned his dial to Jetray and said, "We'll be right up." Chiyo then picked an alien, making the top slide back and the dial pop up. She then slammed it down, and in a pink flash she changed into Stinkfly. Her version was clearly female. and she was dressed in the same outfit Stinkfly had when Ben was 10, but her skin was lighter in color and her wings were butterfly-like. She smiled and said, "And you guys are in for a big surprise." Brother and sister then flow out of the pit to some gasps of shock. 1 month later in the park. 2 bulls were throwing a doll between them while the little girl who owned it was in tears trying to get it back. In a moment a bandage grabbed the doll and gave it back to the little girl. The 2 bullies then turned to see a female Snarrow dressed in a pink Egyptian dress with a gold neck brace, and pink headdress. A pink omnitrix symbol was around her waist on a black belt. The bullies ran away and the lady Snarrow returned to being Chiyo, who was in a pink, short-sleeve shirt, peach shorts, white socks and brown shoes. The lady girl ran up and said, "Thanks you Miss Tennyson." Chiyo smiled and said, "It's nothing, I don't like bullies." At that moment Ben walked up. He had gotten rid of his jacket and now had a short-sleeve black shirt with green lining like the shirt he used to wear when he was 10 with a white number 10 on the chest. Ben waved and said, "Chiyo, we got a mission, come on." Chiyo jumped for joy, "Yes, hero time." Later on in a plumber craft Chiyo was with Ben as Jessica drove. Chiyo blinked, "Wait, where are Kevin and Gwen?" Ben then said, "It's date night for them. Plus, Gwen doesn't like where we are going, the kingdom of Zarkovia." Jessica looked to Ben, "You mean that kingdom that's in a civil war, because people just personally don't like the royal family?" Ben crossed his arms, "Yeah, but for the rebels' credit, the prince is kind of a JRK. I won't want him to be my leader either." In a moment fighter jets showed up and messaged them saying, "In name of the prince, land and hand over your craft and pay for your crime of trespassing." They then fired off missile. Jessica blinked and said, "I see what you mean, Ben." She then opened a button opening a hatch in the floor. Ben then jumped down and slammed down on the omnitrix dial, becoming a new alien. He shouted the alien's name out loud, "Artiodactyl." Ben shrugged as he made energy whips hitting the missiles, making them explode away from the plumber craft as he said, "It'll do." Chiyo then jumped down and slammed down on the omnitrix dial and morphed into a female member of Ghost Freak's race. Over her head was a pink back with an eye hole cut, around her neck was a black band that had the omnitrix symbol on it. She had black bands around her wrist that had a long pink chain connecting them. Her outer skin was light gray covered in pink bandages. Chiyo's one pink eye widened as she said, "Ghost Freak. I want Jet Ray." Chiyo moved her hands out wide, the chain growing to not restrict her motion as she hovered over to missile and slashed them with her claws, making them explode around her, leaving the ghost unhurt. In moments Jessica landed, as did Ben and Chiyo. In a moment soldiers with metal helmets, backpacks and lasers on their arms walked up around the prince. Prince Eula then said, "Your ship now belongs to me." At that moment the old king walked up and said, "No, it doesn't. This people were invited by me. I am still the king." Eula looked at his father, "The balance of power swings to me. It is only a matter of a time and not much of that." He then left with his army. The king then watched Chiyo and Ben to return to human form as he waved for them and Jessica to follow them. Once in the throne room Jessica crossed her arms, "Your son is a JRK, your majesty." The king Zarian sighed, "It isn't all his fault. He lost his mother, my beloved wife, at a young age because of a drunk driver. He yelled at me to take form the man what he took for his mom, but he didn't mean to kill. I gave him a fair trial, and life in prison. My son, he viewed me as too weak to lead since that day." Chiyo blinked and said, He hates you because you showed mercy. But mercy is what makes a hero." The king looked down, "His mother was always the strength behind the throne, I was always the voice that clammed her down. She was strength, I was mercy. He clearly never learned you need a mix of both. There is a team for strength and a time for mercy. Now he has a new weapon, a monster. Please, I ask you to destroy it before he unleashes it upon this land." He then pointed, "It is locked up in the castle lab. Only the device upon the 2 siblings' wrist could get someone past them." They then nodded and walked along and came to a door. Chiyo then slammed down on her omnitrix, turning into a female Frankenstrike. She was a lot more human in shape than her brother's version, the conductors on her back being only half-sized, her hands pure metal, her skin had a pale blue tint to it, and on her chest was a pink top. Her omnitrix symbol was on her belt. She then smashed the door and smiled and said, "Yes. I want Frankenstrike." They then spotted a laser grid, and in moments Ben was Big Chill, who flew through them harmlessly to a block of ice. Big Chill's eyes widened as he spotted what was in it: Victor. He then breathed ice on the power cell for the lasers, making the lasers shut off as the girls ran over. Jessica tapped the ice. "Is it alive in there?" They then heard a laugh and spotted the prince walking down the stairs and said, "It matters not, it is an empty shell only following my orders." He then pulled out a device and hit a button and said, "Victor, attack the intruders." In a moment Victor flecked and broke out of it and went to punch Ben, only for him to flow back and grab Jessica. Ben went ultimate and put Jessica between two machines and said, "Stay here." Ben then spotted Victor shooting lightning at Chiyo, only for Chiyo to absorb and throw it back at him as a ball of lightning, knocking him back. "Two can play this game." Ultimate Big Chill then breathed his ice fire, freezing Victor again. Chiyo then pointed at the prince and said, "Open your eyes, anything Victor can do me and my brother can do as well." Eula then laughed as he said, "Yet you are weak with compassion." In a moment they heard Jessica scream as Eula's servant Fritz held a laser blaster to her head. Ben's eyes widened. "Jessica." Eula laughed, "Give up or she'll blow her pretty little head off." Ben and Chiyo then returned to human form and Chiyo said, "UJRK." Moments later they were locked up in a cell, Ben and Chiyo's hands held up so they could reach the omnitrix or Udamatrix. In a moment gas filled the room, knocking them out. Some soldiers and King Zarian then walked in and said, "Grab either of the Tennyson, either one will do." A soldier then removed Chiyo's bands and grabbed her, taking her to a lab where she hooked her up to a table and put a headset on her. The king then touched the omnitrix, making her change into a female version of Wildmutt with a pink collar that held her omnitrix symbol, then NRG, which only difference from her brother's version was the light coming from within the armor was pink, not reed. Then finally amphibian. The king then put a helmet on his head and connect a wire to Victor's body. "Now for my greatest plan." He then flipped to SWCH, and the energy form Chiyo's alien form flow through the fires into the king and Victor. In a moment the prince walked in and fired at the wires, making his father fall down dead. "You will not take my monster." Fritz walked in and gasped, "Sir, your father." Before she could finish Victor laughed and said, "Is better than ever." The prince gasped as Victor grabbed him, "Come on now son, don't want to hug your old man." He then laughed, "This is what I've planned on since you found this thing. You believe me weak. And while there is a time for mercy, you are right about this being a time for strength." In a moment the prince was shocked, knocking him out. King Victor then dropped him and said, "Rest son, for this will be the last act of mercy you shall receive from your father. I am King Victor." He then punched through a castle wall, knocking, and walked out, now to crush the rebels. In a moment Chiyo woke up and phased through the restraints and flew off. Well, time to go get Big Brother and Jessica. Later at the rebel camp it was in fire as Victor picked up a tank and smashed it into the ground as he said, "I am your king. You dare try to steal my throne. If you didn't like living in my country you should have just left, not try to steal it. Now you must pay for your crimes." He picked up the tank and in a moment fireballs melted them, covering him in molten metal, as he spotted one male and one female heat blast and tried to move to them, only for the metal to harden, trapping him as a living statue. Chiyo jumped and said, "Yes. Now let's take him to jail." Jessica walked up and said, "We can't do that, Chiyo." Chiyo blinked in confusion and said, "But why? Look at him, he's an alien who tried to kill humans." Ben crossed his arms. "Now he's a human in an alien body like us, who was trying to end a war in his own country." The prince then arrived with his cyborgs and said, "Why yes, he is. You can do nothing here. As he is a royal and now that he is a living statue I am in control." He then picked up a controller. "Now my cyborgs." Before he could order them Ben fired a fireball, making him drop the melting device, making the metal fall of the army, who then left. Ben then said, "Not sure on the local polities, but I am not having slaves." Chiyo screamed, "You mean this is it? We can do nothing else?" Jessica crossed her arms, afraid so. King Victor then spoke, "You have made a powerful enemy this day, Tennyson family." Chiyo then touched his face, making the metal melt over it so he couldn't speak. "Well, that's one thing we could do." Meanwhile in Japan. In school, Tomo was crying, "It's so boring." Yomi then point to Charmcaster and Osaka, who were using magic to make 2 pieces of paper fold into people. Weasel, really, you call that boring? Tomo then yawned, "Yes, they always do this." Yukari then walked in and said, "Okay, listen up. We got a new student. And she's not from this planet. Not one xenophobic remark or you will be transferred to Kimura's class." All the girls in the class screamed, as Kimura had reasonably stopped wearing his ID mask, leaving the reasons of what his wife sees in him clear to see. "Okay, please welcome Eunice." Eunice then walked in and pinched her skirt to bow and said, "Hi, I'm Eunice. I'm a cyborg test tube baby made using what would later be the basic workings for Ben's watch. I hope we can be friends." Tomo's eyes widened and she said, "Well, I'm not bored anymore." Kagura then said, "Did you have to introduce yourself like that? I mean, you could have spaced that out a bit." Osaka was slack-jawed, "I heard about you. Your daddy made Ben and Chiyo's watches." Eunice then smiled and said, "Yeah, and now that Primus is being shut down, Dad doesn't need the help running it, so he sent me here as a cyborg human. Doesn't really fit in on Galvan Prime." Sakaki blinked and said, "The daughter of Azimuth. This is going to be something." A lot of the boys were slack-jawed with hearts in their eyes as Eunice walked by to take a seat. Yukari blinked and said, "Great, now I'm the homeroom teacher of 2 witches and a power-copying cyborg. I don't get paid enough for this." So alright folks, that's all for today. Stay tuned for part 5. Do subscribe, like and share for more such videos. Also check out the story and author JBoy44 on fanfiction.net. Press the bell icon to be notified first on release. See you in the next video. Till then, goodbye.